Good afternoon to everyone out there today. I'm changing things up a little bit today. This is an afternoon recording. It is about 20 after 3 right now on Sunday, June 23rd. In New Jersey, we are right now in the middle of a heat wave this year. It's at least the third day in a row we're in the 90s. And if you look at like weather.com, whether you like that as a good source of information or not, they say it feels like 102, 103. And I don't doubt that. So, what do you do when it's that hot outside and you don't have to be out there? You stay inside. Maybe turn some lights off. Make sure the air conditioning's on nice. And relax. Sometimes you relax, you read a book. Sometimes you watch TV, you do whatever else. But I've already taken care of my daily indoor chores today, so I'm here finishing this book today. I wrote my notes on my little Excel sheet right in front of me, and I'm going to talk to you about it. But what am I talking to you about today? I think you already know. Got the picture when you clicked on this already. This is Jim Butcher's The Dresden Files. This one in particular is called Summer Night. And Summer Night is the fourth in what I believe are at least 17 novels in the series so far. Again, that I know of. I heard there's one or two that he already has planned that are coming out. One I think is called 12 Months and one's called maybe Mirror Mirror. But they'll get there when they get there. In the meantime, I still have to get there. So I started at the beginning. I'm moving my way. Now, when I say he's got the 17 novels, that doesn't count the collections of short stories, the graphic novels, the microfiction or micro vignettes that are out there. The universe of where to find more stories like this is vast. And I'll talk about the list I'm going through on this later on at the end. But I want to say, in case he's out there somewhere, Mr. Butcher, I am glad to be a visitor to this world that you are created. I'm on board for the series. Thank you very much. And to everyone else out there, maybe you're thinking about these works. Let me just say, at its heart, it's a private eye story. There's plenty of them out there. I enjoy reading them. Going back to, what's his name? Oh my God, Sherlock Holmes. Again, the age. Sherlock Holmes, they were private eye stories. You can go through Hercule Poirot. There's tons out there. Even for the most part, I love the one author, Andrew Vox, and he has the Burke series. Great series. Absolutely love them. I'd love to get them out here one day as well, but they're practically private eye things too. Now, Dresden goes through your classic, I actually have an office, and maybe someday someone comes in, and boom, there's a case. Whereas Burke isn't quite like that. You know, people do find him out for his thing, but, you know, it is what it is. Private eye stories, they're fun. You never know where they're going to take you. And being a private eye story, if you haven't read them before or haven't followed them on television, usually someone comes around and hires your investigator, okay? Give them a story, tell them what they want with very few clues. And now the guy's got to get out there and try to follow what small threads are even able to pull on. Usually at one point, especially in Harry's case, he gets beat on by somebody. Somebody just has it out for him either because of stuff he's done in the past or the fact that he's even on the case. And it happens more often than not. Then there's like I said, the pulling of the threads. And Jim Butcher does a decent job of letting things come along at a good pace. You know, it's kind of a slow to work on, but then boom, he grabs that one piece of information. And now he has to go investigate that piece of information. So, as he collects this data, there's even those moments of realization of how two things fit together or what the overarching story is in total. And he doesn't do it in one of those, like, Deus Ex Machina type of ways where he'll just drop it in your lap. He'll actually have the story unfold. There are even times along the way that there'll be some kind of magic performed to use to assist in finding the next thread or figuring out where the next thread leads to. And then, like in these stories, especially in these stories, there's action, there's intrigue. There's that bomb that usually goes off where all the pieces just start fitting together, and then you go to your climax, and then generally the consequences of the climax. So that's kind of what these stories follow, okay? And along the way, you're learning more about the other beings or mythical creatures or whatever that inhabits this world. You get more of Harry's past, now that you're kind of along for the ride, being its book number 4. Horror's relationships. You see the new ones and how they grow, or how they're taxed to the limit of breaking, and possibly even breaking. Where friends are now lost. The magic he employs. You get into how it's used. What are the rules of how magic can be used? What are the costs of performing a ritual or doing a spell? Or even for whoever is the force that polices all the magic, if I do this, will they come after me, kind of a thing. So, on top of all this, Harry Dresden is a very down on his luck private eye. I mean, financially, he's poor. He hardly gets enough jobs because who's going to hire a wizard? No one believes in it to begin with. So you can see he has trouble even affording some of the ingredients he needs for certain spells to make. He hardly even has money for food. And even with this, in every adventure so far, he has gone through the ringer every time. I mean, he is physically tired because he's either been busted up by being beaten up by people who don't want him in the case, or the threads that he follows goes to a certain location that people don't want him there, and he gets in trouble, and just his bodies are taxed. Or his body is taxed, should I say. Even his mental and sorcerer wizardy abilities, they get taxed. Because he's in attacks so often, he's got to keep putting up self-defense after self-defense, Or maybe he has to go through some kind of invocation that he hasn't been able to do before, or he talks about having done it before, and it almost brought him to the brink. He's generally tapped. So he's a broke, starving, just weary man. And you've got to see how he overcomes all this and gets from point A to point B. I mean, overall, it's just a fun read, for me. So that being said, what happens in this book? So in Summer Night, it starts off pretty funny, where he's off doing a small little investigation where it's literally raining frogs. And he's got to figure out, are these actual frogs, or are they just constructs of some being? So he's out there, and you get this kind of like primer right away of when things like this happen in the world, either something has already hit the fan, or something is about to hit the fan. So you already get a small taste that there are stakes. I don't know what they are, but there's some stakes at play here that you got to be wary about, and you'll probably have to end up trying to help save the day on. Now, with this introduction where we start out, we see there's repercussions from the end of the last book, and that one was Grave Peril. They carried over into this, and it starts immediately. You see, the vampires he pissed off in the last book, now they've got a price on his head. So he has to deal with that immediately, while also doing this thing with frogs, And not only are they after him, but they've even threatened the magical society that he's a part of, this White Council. These are the ones that lord over all the magical beings on Earth, and have come up with their own ethics of, you can use magic for that, but don't do that. Like never kill anybody. Or never try to force someone against their will to do anything. They don't like that kind of stuff. So Harry always has to be sure what he's doing is within the rules and doesn't break them, or they're just going to come after his ass. So these vampires are threatening Harry's relationship with their council, who in turn already blame him for crap that happened in the past. So you get started with a decent action sequence, and for added fun, they even bring along some of those werewolves that they had in the second novel, Full Moon. They're in the fray as well. So unlike a procedural drama you might watch like Castle, which I enjoyed, and or CSI, these novels, the stories, actually do have consequences that go and continue after this one's over from the last one. The other ones that are procedural dramas are one and done, and they hardly ever go back to it again, and people don't change too much from episode to episode. Cool. So moving along, this being a private eye story, after he gets past the initial opening scene, he gets his client. And gets to the office, meets the client, and now you realize that he's going to be really embroiled in a magical affair. This ain't a regular, like, I need a private eye kind of thing, and maybe you can enchant him in some fashion. He is really being brought into a war of realms, okay? This affair literally opens up worlds in the series to learn about and investigate and adventure within. So the one that this one actually entails a lot of, we learn that there's two major elemental courts in the universe, okay? There's they've been dueling in the lands of fairy since probably forever, We're introduced to the Summer Court and the Winter Court, okay? So the Summer Court, you're thinking nature, nice summer, spring kind of things. Think the Gump from Legend. That would be a Summer Court kind of person. And the Winter Court, you're talking about the Ice Queens from just about everything. Look at the Ice Queen from Narnia. Not that one. This one. That kind of a person. Or even from The Huntsman. The Snow White story. Or not Snow White. Whatever. You'll see the picture. So they exist. They're always at odds, but they keep a balance. Okay? Within these courts, they have quite the majestic hierarchy that rules them. Okay? There's like 3 queens on each side. So, for example, on the Winter side, you've got Mother Winter, the Winter Queen, and the Winter Lady, which is almost like the queen that was, the queen that is, and the queen that will be. Okay, they kind of have that. They all exist. They're all powerful, but there is a hierarchy. Okay. Oh, and they also have a mortal champion that helps them out, such as the Winter Knight. So with this hierarchy, it's in winter, it's also in summer. The exact same things. There's a Mother Summer, a Summer Queen, and a Summer Lady with a Summer Knight. Haha, Summer Knight. Sorry about that. So, the two factions keep balance between the different dualities of the realms of Fae. And if that balance would falter to one side or the other significantly, they pretty much just say the mortal realm would be in peril. Now, they do kind of swing back and forth, like the summer solstice and the winter solstice actually is where like the majority of the power, or not the majority, but like to say power does swing to one side versus the other during those time frames. So not enough to overbalance it enough to make one want to kill the other with power. It just ebbs and flows, and they go with it. Okay? So, that's all interesting, whatever else. But why should we care? What does that have to do with the story we might want to read? Well, it turns out Mr. Summer Knight has been killed. And killing one of the top 4 in the majesty or the hierarchy is kind of a big deal when you're talking about the balance between the two. Now, usually what happened is the knight's killed, powers reabsorbed, you find another knight, boom, you bestow it on them. That power, they call it his mantle, would get reabsorbed back in the realm, and then now would go along to the next Summer Knight. Okay, but something has happened, and that process has not happened. It did not occur. So now one side is missing their knight. And like anything else, we see it nowadays when people yell about like Democrat and Republican. If you don't like what's going on, it has to be the other side. Well, the Summer Knight was killed. It must have been winter. So, because of that, this might really start a war. And that might be a problem. So, our hero, Harry Dresden, is now thrown into the chaos. Gotta find out. Because did somebody frame Winter for this murder? And therefore, it's causing the balance to shift in such a way that even though the Summer Knight is killed, Winter would be more powerful. Summer may be forced to attack Winter and then spark off this whole war. But Winter's like, we wouldn't do that. We're kind of in power right now as it is. Or, no, I'm sorry. This is in the summer-ish. The solstice is about to come or something like that. So I think Winter's about to get the majority of the power or the balance of power swung in like a week. Not even, like 2 days. So they wouldn't need to kill him now. So what's going on? And that's what you're into, the whole intrigue of everything. Now, to bring this whole mess full circle, I said there was repercussions from the last story, and the vampires are coming against Harry. Well, it turns out that the White Council needs the Court of Winter because they need to move against the vampires, and in order to do that properly, they have to kind of like jaunt into the realm of Fae on Winter's side, go through it, and pop out the other end where the vampires are so they can surprise them. Okay, that's traveling through the Never Never. But Winter doesn't want to do that for them because they're kind of being accused of something else. So now it's like, listen, you want Winter to help with them. That's right. Help Winter with their problem of being framed for the death of the Summer Knight, and then Winter will help the White Council go do their thing against the vampires. You know, tit for tat. Scratch my back, I'll scratch yours, but you first. So it's already, and we're not very many chapters into the book at this point, but it brings this whole thing together. The other thing it introduces you to, again, a whole new realm, in a way, is the White Council itself. So you've already heard in past books the snippets about there are rules. They're kind of out to get Harry for what he's done in the past, but it's still kind of murky what he actually did do. They've got a warden who's tried to arrest him a couple times, who's just kind of like a dick against them, saying, like, this is your fault, I'm taking you in right now. So the White Council meets. You get to meet who they are, how they meet, what the whole event looks like, do they even have protocols, and yada yada. There's a whole boatload of stuff in there that we are thrown into. And just details that are great to absorb. Okay. We've heard about the council before. Now we're actually meeting them. Okay. You learn about the players. You learn why in better detail of why the White Council is tangentially against Harry. Why the warden's after him as well, being like their officer of the court. And he even brings you into almost some kind of like the trial of Harry Dresden of sorts. It has a lot going on in there to talk about the importance of this, where Harry's role is in it, as important or not important as that they may be. And he's almost getting hung out to dry because they think he's also responsible for the war with the vampires. Hey, you know something? Let's put him in a nice little bow and gift wrap him, give him to the vampires. Our war is over with. Of course, that would also be the end of a book series, but so this whole thing is like Harry's got to figure out how to get Winter to help out the White Council, got to figure out how to get unframed Winter, got to figure out how to not die and be served up to the vampires like an hors d'oeuvre. I'll tell you what, it is a page turner. It definitely was for me. And I'll tell you what, for 450-page books, they fly by with their good level of detail and the way it absorbs you in. And even after that, the hits just keep on coming. There are battles that are just necessary or ones that are just thrust upon our hero and the group that might even be with him. They change from one little micro-universe or realm to another. I mean, in this book, you go from the White Council to the Winter Court to the Summer Court to like the Battle of Home Depot practically. Lots of magic in this battle too. The fairy godmother makes a reappearance, and she's already got something on Harry that he can't escape for like the next year. Or he can escape for the next year, and then he's done. There's other excursions into the Never Never. There's a battle at a wharf, and then finally the huge climactic battle of the Fae. I mean, just amazing journeys. So, way to go, Jim Butcher. Now, the only time I stopped and had to pause on a very micro incident in this book that didn't make so much sense to me, I even dog-eared the page so I can come back to it anytime I want to discuss like I am now. But Harry's got this friend in the Chicago Police Department named Karen Murphy, okay? Great relationship these two have, ups and downs, okay? And in the past, she's brought him in to consult upon some weird cases. And he has a bad habit of finding more details and not reporting back to her. But he always says, I'm trying to save you. You can't be a part of this. They can't know about you specifically. Let me just handle this. But he doesn't say that because he keeps it from her and just does it himself. So the case gets resolved and she's like, what just happened? How'd you get from A to B to C, So after the last caper, she got involved. There was someone who kind of looked like Harry, doppelgangered him, and let's just say Karen Murphy has started to see some shit, okay? And she's experienced shit to the point that this dude made her live her own worst nightmares, and he kind of like put his fingertips in her head and whittled around in her memories and whatnot. So she's kind of a part of this, and it's strained the relationship that he wouldn't tell her stuff. But now he's in a bind and needs to just discuss things with her because she is a detective. So they sit down for some coffee, and he kind of like just empties his purse all over the place, And mind you, by the way, what's going on so far is not a CPD case. So he's just chatting about her. And they give you a quick little, 30,000 feet view. He lays everything out there and within like 5 sentences and says, I told her about everything and even the White Council. And then with some solid repiping, Karen's like, so let me get this straight. And blah, 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 puts everything in the nice logical order for us, the reader. And also from her perspective. And while she's giving this let me get this straight kind of thing, she comes across a part in their tete-a-tete when she's like, so how about this other mortal night then? The winter night. And they talk about him, and Harry's like, yeah, he's an asshole, and this, that, and the other, and yada, yada. So then there's kind of like an attack on where they are having the coffee, this little battle at Lowe's or whatever I told you about. And then By the way, great battle, lots of magic, fantastic, right? And it gets all done, and they start to like separate, and she's like, you know something? I'm gonna go check out some stuff back at headquarters. I'll go try to find out anything about this Lloyd Slate I can and come back to you. And I guess I wasn't paying attention, because even I was like, who the hell is Lloyd Slate? And I went back a little bit. Oh, he's the Winter Knight. Okay. She mentioned the Winter Knight before, now said Lloyd Slate. Alright. But I had to like think about it. I was like, did he ever mention the name Lloyd Slate to Karen? And I kind of checked through the pages, and no, it ain't there. You know, I mean, I thought it was just my memory being my memory. You know, I didn't remember it from when it was mentioned before, and I thought maybe I missed him saying it now, but he didn't say anything. He didn't mention it. So her knowing the name wasn't ever typed down. Now let me segue for a second. I actually helped someone with this experience once before. I might have talked about it here if you watch all the episodes. There's a girl I met on Facebook one time. We were actually playing that game Vampire Wars from Zynga. Okay, we ended up being in the same clan. But to be in the same clan to play the game, you had to be actual connected as friends on Zynga. And it happened however it happened. But one of the things, it turns out that she was also like a fiction writer. Did some fanfic as well. And she would put her work on her page. So sometimes I would check it out and kind of read her work. It's like, you know, it's supernatural-ish, it's Twilight, that kind of fiction. And in this one part in like the second or third chapter, and they were short chapters, she was, the main character was like rescued by whatever being, this, you know, the Twilight vampire dude, and afterward taken back to his home. And she starts meeting some other people and getting to know other characters. And at one point, this one dude walks in, and she's like, so you must be Kaiser. And I had the same feeling. I'm like, never seen this name before. And I went back through the chapters, never even mentioned. And there was never even a section like, you know, he tells her about the past or something like that. It was just never mentioned, never I've heard so much about you kind of reason to say a phrase like that. So the fact that she was like, oh, and you must be, was like, well, wait a minute, you don't even know who this person is in the past, much less saying that now. So it was one of those things I was like, doesn't sound right. And I mentioned it to her, and she's like, oh, you know something, you're right. I might have taken that thing out. I got to put it back in. And she kind of fixed it up, and it made more sense. So that memory came back. So I was wondering if the exact same thing happened here. You know, if he never mentioned Lloyd Slate, why would she go searching for the name Lloyd Slate? Didn't make sense. However, this is where that little Marvel no prize comes into play. And if you're not familiar with that, it's one of those things where if you ever saw something in a Marvel comic book which looked like an error, but you can come up with a reason why it's not an error, you could put it in a letter to Marvel, and they would send you what they called the no prize. I don't know what was in it. I think I have a cousin who got one once, but when he got the envelope, there was nothing inside of it. I don't know if they didn't put something inside of it intentionally because it's a no prize, or if that was just a mistake. But I know this thing exists. It exists or existed. I couldn't tell you about today. I haven't read a comic book in 25 years. But it's possible that when they just say Harry lays out everything to Karen, you can assume it's in there. So even though in her solid repiping, in her dialogue tags, she doesn't say anything about the name specifically, then you might be able to hide it under the fact that, you know, Harry told her about everything. I made it a point to, let me say it better. I made it a point to not care about this a couple pages later. I got it, got a little bit, pause. Okay, maybe, alright, let me keep reading. I want to know the rest of the story. So, a few pages later, kind of went down, you know, I made a little mark for it. I laid it down here. So I was like, I'll pick it up when I tell this story to you. But you know something? I'm going to consider this my therapy. I'm over it. I'm done with it. It wasn't that big. So, there you have it. I hope this gives you a good lay of the land on this installment of the series. Okay. As you may have already known or heard before, I like what I'm reading here. So obviously when you're into a book, especially a series, like I said, 450 pages, that's nothing. Flying through this kind of stuff. And I've even gone out, and on my shelf behind me, back there against the corner, I have the whole collection. You know, I've even got a reading order of how you should read the Dresden Files in order. Obviously, the novels are, boom, how they came out, 1 through 17. Okay? But there's also short story collections. There's 2 of them. One's called Briefcases. Briefcases, huh? And the other one's called Side Jobs. Okay? Small little short stories that he had written over time. But they're actually in these short story collections, one by one, chronologically. Okay? However, it's not like, well, read Briefcases and then read Side Jobs. There's actually like, if you go through a reading order, and I'll put the reading order link down below, I found this interesting one online. It's like, read the first story in Briefcases, then go read a story in a graphic novel, then read the first 2 books. And then read a couple more of these, and 2 stories from that, and 1 story from that. You might even read a micro vignette that's online, and he kind of puts them in a really decent chronological order, which I'm sure there's people out there that disagree with, like, oh no, you have to put that one before that. Or this story's a spoiler to that one. But hey, it's a full thing. That's those. And in fact, from behind me, if I can do this, that right there is that collection. It's short story, that paper is the actual list, and below that, 3 graphic novels. And I'll probably do one thing for all the short stories and the graphic novels later when I get done with them. But they're not going to be done till like book 16 or 17, so you're not seeing that anytime soon. But yeah, these novels, the short story books, the graphic novels, the micro vignettes, you get the whole universe. Okay? I will be picking up the next novel, Death Masks, shortly. I will be oscillating between reading my Dresden Files and my splatter westerns for a while, and there'll be an odd job in between, I'm sure. So, there you have it. I hope this has been informative, or at least entertaining for the last 32 minutes or so. I'd like to say to everybody, keep reading. Just keep reading. And I will see you as soon as I can. Cheers.